Miss Mary Agnes.
You know, there's one thing you can count on in the Methodist Church. They're going to keep you in meetings and send you to classes all the time. And so it is with us lay speakers. We have a lot of them that we have to attend. Most of them are quite good, but now and then you get into one that you just almost wish you might have skipped. Such was the case last year. But I did come away from it with something. The young man, who was a young preacher that taught the class, told us about an experience he had on one of his first appointments. He was over in the hills of North Carolina at a small country church, and he said he learned early on that there was one lady in the congregation that he could count on to tell it like it was. So he went by to see Miss Alice one day and he said, "Miss Alice, tell me, how am I doing?" She said, "Well, preacher, you're doing pretty good. I just wish you wouldn't preach so many happy sermons." He was sort of taken aback. He thought, well, what's wrong with happy sermons? She said, "I tell you, there's some people in this church that got some pretty heavy problems. There's some storms raging in their lives. They don't need happy sermons every Sunday." So today, you're not going to exactly hear a happy sermon, but I hope that it will be a sermon that will be meaningful to you. If you'd like to read the scripture with me, if you'll turn to Mark, the 4th chapter, the 35th through the 41st verses. On the evening of that same day, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go across to the other side of the lake." So they left the crowd. The disciples got into the boat in which Jesus was already sitting, and they took him with them. Other boats were there too. Suddenly a strong wind blew, and the waves began to spill over into the boat so that it was about to fill with water. Jesus was in the back of the boat, sleeping with his head on a pillow. And the disciples woke him up and said, "Teacher, don't you care that we are about to die?" And Jesus stood up and commanded the wind, "Be quiet." And he said to the waves, "Be still." The wind died down, and there was a great calm. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Why are you frightened? Do you still have no faith?" But they were terribly afraid and began to say to one another, "Who is this man? Even the winds and the waves obey him." This is a story that most of us have heard countless times. It had been a long day for Jesus and his disciples, and they decided to get into the boat and pass over to the other side, to get away from the people and the crowds and just rest for a while. Then suddenly, and without warning, there arose a mighty storm which tossed the vessel about and quickly filled it with water, and the disciples were afraid. And where was their master? He was asleep. And they called out, as we sometimes do. This from the King James Version. "Carest thou not that we perish? Lord, don't you even care what's happening to me? Why are you back there sleeping?" You know, storms come in different forms and different intensities. Sometimes they just happen. Other times, we may bring them upon ourselves. But whatever the case, they are frightening and they can be very destructive. Nature storms destroy lives and property, while life storms destroy spirit and hope and cause us to feel alone and abandoned. They may come in the form of a lingering illness, an illness that befalls us or someone we love very much. They may come in the form of a broken marriage, the loss of a child, a spouse, a parent, or a job, to name only a few. But they come. Let's consider some things about the storms in our lives. First, storms are inevitable. Sooner or later, they come to all of us. No one is immune. If it hadn't happened to you yet, just watch. It will. And like the disciples, our boat is tossed about, and we too feel alone and abandoned. Have you ever tried to pray and felt as if Jesus just plain was not listening? It was as if he was off somewhere sleeping, as was the case with the disciples. And you felt that nobody cared, really cared, that your ship was sinking and you were drowning while the rest of the world went merrily on its way. Second, storms come without warning. We don't receive a text or an email telling us to take heed that a storm is on the way. Personal storms hit when we least expect them. And suddenly our world is turned upside down. Storms don't just hit and move quickly on their way. They linger and batter and rage. And in the midst of our storm, it's hard to imagine that anyone has ever endured the anguish and plain out misery we're going through. And sometimes when the storms of life are raging, we get mad at God. And like Jesus on the cross, we cry out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Do you not care if I perish? Does the name Waylon Jennings mean anything to any of you? Maybe we don't have that many. I see a few hands going up. Maybe we got a few country music fans here. Waylon Jennings had a career that lasted 5 decades. He had 16 #1 hits during that time in the country music field. During this time, he and his then wife, Jessie Coulter, recorded a song called Storms Never Last. Some of the lyrics were, storms never last, do they, baby? Bad times all pass with the winds. Your hand in mine stills the thunder, and you make the sun want to shine. The storms of life Waylon and Jessie had endured were brought about by Waylon's addiction to cocaine. An addiction that lasted 20 years. He had seen others try without success the various treatment programs. And finally he decided if he was to ever shed this habit, he must do it cold turkey. Went up into the mountains, rented a place with Jessie and their small child. And the thunder rolled and the winds blew as he struggled with the horrible pains of withdrawal, waiting, hoping, praying that somehow he could ride out the storm and shake the chains that bound him. And in time, Waylon conquered a 20-year cocaine addiction. Sometimes when the storms of life are raging, there's not a lot we can do but ride out the storm. There are no quick answers, not always any quick help. But eventually the thunder ceases and the winds grow calm and the sun shines again. The disciples were afraid and they cried out, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose and rebuked the wind and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. If you're experiencing one of life's storms this morning, there is help. There is one who can calm the storm. His invitation is, Come unto me, all ye who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Jesus didn't promise us smooth sailing, but he did promise safe passage. This morning, if the storms of life are raging in your life or in the life of someone you care about, as we sing the closing hymn, I invite you to place your hand in the hand of the man who can still the thunder and give you hope and make the sun shine again. Also, I would like you during the time that we are to invite you during the time we are singing number 512 entitled Stand By Me. If you feel you would like to, if there is a storm in your life or if there's a storm in the life of someone you know, I'm so glad the Methodist Church still has an altar. There's something really special to me about the altar and saying a prayer. And I invite you, if you'd like to do that, if you don't want to, maybe you want to just say a prayer in your seat. But you're certainly welcome to come and say a prayer for that person that you know and love, for whom the storms of life are raging. And say a prayer for yourself if you are that person.